Hi, Kathy. I just want you to know that you've been a really big light in my life. And sometimes at times that you might not have known, it was really, really a big deal. So I'm excited to ask you these questions and have you share some things that I know have been really meaningful to myself and others in our lives as choral musicians. So if you're okay with that, we'll get going.
Well, thank you, Sue. And likewise, I feel so strongly about how you've enriched my life, the work that you do with students. And some of those students have come to work with me at the University of Minnesota. So it's a big choral family in Minnesota, and we're very grateful for that.
So if you could talk a little bit about your first thoughts and experiences at your first choral job in Minnesota.
Of course. I came to Minnesota with my husband, who had gotten a job as the manager of the Dale Warland Singers. And Dale Warland at that time was teaching at Macalester College and needed an assistant conductor. So my first choral job was as assistant conductor to Dale Warland at Macalester College. And I will say that that year, assisting Dale, impacted the rest of my career. Uh, I I learned so much about what it means to run a collegiate choral program, to engage with scholars, to program music, to um, create meaningful projects, and to understand just the art of rehearsing and conducting and performing and presentation. Dale is a genius in this area, and he was a significant mentor to me as a child, but then growing up and then in Minnesota. So truly my first job was a dream job because I was assisting Dale Warland.
What were some of the road bumps in building choral programs here in Minnesota that you never thought would happen?
Yeah, well, I love that question because I really was handed amazing choral programs, which I then was able to bring my own skills to. But certainly at Macalester College, when Dale Warland decided to take a leave of absence and I was hired for his 1 year replacement, and then took the program when he decided to do the Dale Warland Singers full time, that was one of the bumps in that program was just how do you follow Dale Warland, you know? And so a first choral job, having worked with your mentor and then taking on the role of your mentor can be somewhat overwhelming. And likewise, my work with the Minnesota Chorale happened in a similar fashion. I was assisting Joel Revson with the Minnesota Chorale, and he gradually conducted more and more out of state, and I was taking on more responsibility and gradually became the artistic director of the Minnesota Chorale. And at the University of Minnesota, I came in as an adjunct choral person, assisting Tom Lancaster, and gradually moved into a position that became more formalized over time, and now I'm running that program. So in terms of building my choral programs, it was more about understanding the culture and the heritage, the traditions of the programs that I stepped into, and what I could bring to them. And I will say that in every situation, I had incredible support and encouragement to follow my passions and to look for ways that I could meaningfully collaborate with communities that already had their own traditions in place, and yet were open to looking at new ideas or issues of programming or collaborations. So I think I was very fortunate. It is a somewhat different road.
When you're in these roles, when you're assisting someone else and it's someone else's vision that you're helping to fulfill or realize, what has doing all of those roles, wearing all those different hats over these years, what has that done for how you interact in the world or in our choral community?
I have so enjoyed my work as a chorus master for the Minnesota Chorale to the Minnesota Orchestra, and also collaborating with colleagues across the country and around the globe. And I would say that having started my profession in Minnesota as an assistant um, opened that door to me of what I loved about collaborating with other people and partnering with them. And throughout my life, I have so valued the opportunity to both be on the podium and step off the podium and watch incredibly amazing practitioners make great music. And sometimes this is through my students. Sometimes it's with Minnesota Orchestra and guest conductors. It's stepping into your classroom and watching you work with your students. I think this is what I so value, is the opportunity to learn from other people. And as a chorus master, you are preparing, and it maybe seems less glamorous, but I love the process of preparation and exploration. And I also love the opportunity to constantly learn and grow from colleagues and world-class conductors who I have the privilege of coming into contact with and partnering with for short periods of time.
I see you so as someone that I find to be an incredible musician. I admire so greatly the fact that you have a curious and collaborative mind, that it is so evident that you are always learning. Any situation you are in, it's not just that you are intently learning from any environment that you're in with any person that you're with or bring along, but when you find an opportunity to share that with the rest of us, you invite us into that space as well. And I wonder how that has shaped your own growth.
I am committed to being a lifelong learner, and I get this from my parents, but I also witnessed this when in my first collaboration with Robert Shaw, when I prepared probably one of the most difficult programs with the chorale that I have ever prepared, 3 Stabat Maters, Verdi, Szymanowski, and Poulenc. And he was so interested in my work. He called me before that first collaboration. What are you doing at the University of Minnesota? What repertoire are you studying at this time with your men's chorus? He said, what do you look forward to? And then he took the time to meet with me. And I would say over and over again throughout my life, there have been individuals that have opened these doors and allowed me to step into their space, as you describe it, to learn from them, to partner with them, collaborate with them, and then to share that in whatever way I am able to in spaces that I go back, return to as an educator, as a performer. I would say that you can learn at any juncture, at any time, from any person. And to have the time to stop and listen and to think and reflect on who is talking to you and what they're bringing to you is something that I am constantly striving for. I don't always feel that I'm the best listener, or maybe I've missed an opportunity to grow in a new way from someone that I am working with or observing. Every individual offers you the chance to think and reflect on your own work, and then you can decide on how you want to receive that information and that gift and apply it going forward.
How did choral colleagues around the state or the country or the world just help to keep your own work fresh?
I would say that I have organized people in almost different categories in my life. So there are those people like Dale Warland, Helmut Rilling, my father, who have served as mentors and advocates and sounding boards for many, many years. And they keep my work fresh because they pose questions, and they also just bring incredible insight and wisdom. But then you have active partners, and those would be my graduate students, Matthew Mahaffey, Osmo Venska, my family, the Minnesota Chorale staff and board. These are active partners in my life, and I learn from them on a daily, weekly basis. So these are partners that are continuing to stimulate and challenge me right now as I'm working in the field. But then there are local colleagues who have brought so much to the choral landscape in the Twin Cities. And, I think about their work. Some of these are former students, and I look at what they're doing and I'm inspired to think again about what I'm doing and to realize that there are so many different ways to approach your work and your craft. And I'm grateful to work in a rich community with incredibly collaborative and supportive colleagues. Sometimes I want to go back in time and be a graduate student again and start all over because of all these amazing people and developments in the field. It is these opportunities and people that you encounter on your journey and that provide you with the inspiration and stimulus to say, I don't know everything, but wouldn't it be fun to at least explore this?
If you had to identify 2 or 3 most important lessons learned throughout the years that so far along your journey as a choral musician, what would those be?
Again, I'm going to think back to my first preparation for Robert Shaw. I was absolutely terrified, and I thought, how do I adequately partner and work with this choral icon? Of course, went back to my mentors to talk to them, and my father said to me finally, Kathy, you can either view this as a threat or as an opportunity. And I still think about that to this day, and I'm grateful to my father for saying that. But it is a kind of a little mantra for me: threat or opportunity. And I will say that I lean towards the latter. You know, I lean towards the person that's a little shy, afraid of taking risks. But over the years, I've learned that taking those risks has led to some of the most significant opportunities for growth and development. A quote by the American choreographer and dancer Martha Graham that was given to me many years ago. But she said, there is a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there's only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. If you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and it will be lost. And the world will not hear it. I get choked up thinking about it. It has sustained me in darker periods because I thought, if my voice is insignificant, it is still my voice. And that's important to share in whatever way I can. That this is something that you have to embrace and you have to share generously. There are 3 kind of humorous maxims of life that were given to me by Tom Somerville. Never feel rushed. Always do the best with what you have. Don't take yourself too seriously. So, Sue, you've known me a long time, and you've seen me when I'm rushed. You've seen me when I've taken myself very seriously. And I do strive to do the best with what I have. But I have loved those 3 maxims because they provide a little bit of perspective. You know, sometimes when I'm driving to a rehearsal and I think, oh my gosh, I'm late again, then I think, never feel rushed, never feel rushed. You know, just breathe, slow down.
We are experiencing a completely new way of trying to have our art be part of healing and remaining vital and present and collaborative in this time that we're in right now. How has this affected your work and you?
It has been a time of vacillation between feeling depressed and dark and hopeless, and then other times feeling challenged and stimulated by the possibilities and the new learning opportunities, and realizing over the month and then another month that we would not be seeing our students again, that we would have students that would graduate and move on. Sue, you experienced this at your high school, not knowing what the school year would look like, and realizing midway through the summer that we would probably be online, and we were. The murder of George Floyd and how that impacted not just the Twin Cities, but the entire world. It was a period of of deep reflection, personally and collectively. And I did reach out to many, many friends, colleagues, family members, just to process all of that. And I continue to do so. I will say, for me personally, I thought, I'm too old to deal with all of this. This just feels overwhelming. I don't know how to Zoom. I don't know what Flipgrid is. I've never used Soundtrap, so in terms of technology, I was kind of dragged kicking and screaming into the room, and decided again, is this a threat or is this an opportunity? I came back to this same lesson. And I also decided for myself, in collaboration with my students and certainly with the Minnesota Chorale, that we needed more voices at the table to look at our current thinking and our practice and to say, should this change? And this is a gift right now to be able to think about what we're doing and to challenge ourselves to broadly examine and thoughtfully listen to other voices and how we might want to rethink our own practice, our own work, our own relationships within the community. So slowly, what was a threat in my mind for quite a few months became an opportunity. And my entire work right now, both with the Minnesota Chorale at the University of Minnesota, is online. And I had the chance to bring amazing voices into my classrooms. We have been doing international workshops with people from the Republic of Georgia, South Africa. Maria Guinan came in 2 weeks ago, worked with my university singers, and she zoomed in from Spain. Who would have thought 1 year ago that this would be a reality, even a possibility, and how that is going to change my work going forward as an educator? Those moments of light and joy and music making in this COVID environment have really sustained and renewed my soul. It's, I think, a daily challenge, at least for me, and I think for many people. So I still complain, but I also understand that this will not be forever and that we will come back together and make music with our community. And it will not look the same, but I think in many ways it will be richer.
But we're suddenly able to have these relationships that we never thought were possible, that we thought were too expensive because we had to buy somebody a plane ticket. And now we can bring artists in these new ways. I think that we can keep those things as we move forward. And I'm so grateful to role models like you who are always looking at the how can we be creative with this and problem solve it in a way that gets exciting for everybody and people are looking forward to.
I would love, Sue, for you to share that wonderful Beth Leitner quote that you have your choir say every day, because when you said that to me, when you shared that quote with me, I thought, this is something that I will take forward with me.
Right. I was, our friend Beth Leitner from the Voice Care Network, she was trying to help us actually deal with that for ourselves so that we could then bring that into our choral rehearsals. And she said this beautiful saying, "Here I am, as I am, in the world as it is." I've taken to starting classes with that every day. And all the students online will unmute their microphones, and all the students that are in the cafeteria with the dishwasher running will look at me and stand up, and we start, "Here I am, as I am, in the world as it is." And it sort of grounds us to be present in this space that we're in right now.
I am so appreciative of having that quote. It will now move into something that I pass on to my students. And thank you for sharing that.
Kathy, thank you so much for the light that you have been and always are in so many of our lives. And just on a personal note, thank you from the bottom of my heart for the light that you have been to me.
You are welcome, Sue, and likewise, thank you.
Well, I'm sitting here with my friend and colleague, Phillip Brunelle. How are you today, Phillip?
I'm just fine, thank you, Philip.
Well, I'm delighted to share a little bit of your story with those in Minnesota who might not know about the living legend that is Phillip Brunelle and the wonderful legacy that you have established and continue to establish here through your work at Plymouth Congregational Church and also with Vocal Essence. So let's talk a bit about, when you first got started at Plymouth Church, what made you want to start the Plymouth Music Series, which is now Vocal Essence?
My idea was, could we create a choral series that would focus on the music beyond the, what I'd call the war horses, that, there's 10 or 12 of them that people all know, and those seemed to be the only music that was being performed at that time. So I decided that we would not do those pieces, but go beyond. So the very first season included one Handel oratorio, not Messiah. It was Judas Maccabeus. And then I knew that I needed to really get people's attention. And as you know, Philip, one of my mottos is, you don't know if you don't ask. So I picked up the phone and called this guy named Aaron Copeland and said, Mr. Copeland, would you come to Minnesota and conduct your choral music? To which he said, young man, no one has ever asked me to do that. And I said, I know. And he said, tell me the date. I will cancel what I'm doing and come. And so Aaron came. We had a full house, of course. People loved him, and Aaron and I became good friends.
That's one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Phillip, is that you have no fear in asking a question. You are always learning, you're always growing, you're always willing to take calculated risks that, quite frankly, usually lead to some really exciting things. So, what has kept you learning and growing through the years?
It has been the encouragement that I've received from singers, first of all, who have been just, oh, thank heavens we had a chance to do this piece, or we had a chance to learn that music, or we had a chance to meet that composer. That became a thrill. Plus the encouragement of other conductors who have been thrilled to know about certain music we've done and then have said, how can I do it? And I said, I'm always willing to share repertoire, So here's this music, take it and do it. It's great.
I think people recognize the success of Vocal Essence, and they know that you have been a standard bearer in bringing in artists from a worldwide scale right here to Minnesota. Many people may not know that you began in the instrumental world, in the orchestra side of things as a percussionist and pianist with the Minnesota Orchestra. Talk about and then with the opera as well, with the Minnesota Opera as the conductor there. Talk about that transition of, helping to elevate the choral art form to that same platform as opera and as instrumental music here in the Twin Cities.
Well, I started as a boy soprano, age 3, singing The Holy City, of course, and many other pieces. So I was trotted around in my young years as this, boy soprano. But I was also starting out, I started at age 4 playing piano. And then I added marimba, and then I added organ. And yes, when I was 19, I became the youngest member of the Minnesota Orchestra, did that for 5 years, and then I became the conductor of Minnesota Opera at about the same time that I began vocal lessons. But during all of that, my whole love of vocal music and of singing was very strong. You know, I did like a lot of junior high kids did. I would spend hours at the Minneapolis Public Library looking at choral music. So many others were down doing that. Wrong. And of course, I had a paper route, and the money I made, I spent it like most kids did at that age. I spent it buying madrigals. You know, again, as my wife says, you know, Philip, you are kind of weird. So, but you know, I've always had this great love for all kinds of music, the diversity of it, and trying to share. To me, it's sharing it with an audience and with people.
One of the things, again, that you've done so well is to introduce these composers and this wide breadth of music from around the world to our communities here in the Twin Cities. Talk about how you've been inspired and encouraged, what you've learned from your choral and composer colleagues from around the country and around the world.
Well, as we all know, there is so much wonderful music. I, like you, like conductors, I really can't conduct something I don't believe in. I really have to believe in this music. And so when I'm in front of a group conducting, I'm full of enthusiasm because I love what it is I'm doing. I don't ever have to apologize for it. Anytime I've done a piece of music by a composer, whether it's an anthem in church or whether it's a work that I've done at vocal lessons, I always send a note to the composer if I know that the composer is alive. And if I don't have an address, I just send it to the publisher, because I'm aware in the choral field, you buy the music, but the composer has no idea who bought the music. The idea actually happened when my wife, Carolyn, I was in the orchestra, and my wife, Carolyn, said she was so moved hearing the Britain War Requiem when the orchestra did it back in the 60s. And she said, I want to send the composer a note. Well, I didn't know his address in England, but I knew what town he was from. And I thought, this is a small town. Just send it to Benjamin Britten, Aldborough, England. She did. And that was in the winter and nothing more. And then in December, a letter came, and she opened it, thought it was a Christmas card, and it was a handwritten letter from Benjamin Britten thanking her for writing. Every composer wants to know about their performances. And so I've done it. And of course, what's happened is that composers have then turned around and said, would you mind if I write a piece for you? And you go, no, I'd love it. And so, you know, this whole wonderful way, it's a mutual kind of experience. So I think that's one of the big ways that I have become excited by music and by finding new music and new composers.
If you had to list, you know, just 2 or 3 things that are on your to-do list, what would those be? I know that's hard to narrow down because that list is larger than I can stretch my arms.
Say, if I had my druthers, we would figure out a way that we could have a concert every day. But that's not going to happen. But I wish we could, because there's so much. I mean, on my shelves, as you know, Philip, I've so many pieces that I would love to do. I've always wanted to do Shostakovich's Katerina Ismailova, which is a great opera with a big choral part, but it takes a huge orchestra and chorus. There's also a wonderful work by Edward Elgar. I've done Dream of Gerontius, but I've never done The Kingdom, which is another terrific piece. Again, a large work. of his. There's a couple of big Gustav Holst pieces, and a piece by Christopher Tin that I would love to see us do. Some things take a long time to gestate and make it happen, but I've just found that almost any composer I have written to has been, delighted that you're interested in their music.
What are a couple of lessons that you've learned that you want to share with, the conductors who are listening today that can encourage them as they move along their journeys?
I knew from the beginning, if you're going to have something like Vocal Essence, you've got to raise money. And if you're going to raise money, you have to be able to say to the people who've supported you, I'm using your money well. Also, being open to new ideas of repertoire from many different people. You have given me wonderful ideas, and many people will say, oh, what about this piece? And I'm like, well, I can't do them all, but I'm really happy to have this idea, because down the road, this might fit into a different program that, is on the horizon.
Absolutely. And for those who aren't running nonprofit organizations, I think all three of those lessons apply. If you're in a school and you have a budget, being able to show how you're using that budget, no matter how limited it is, and showing appreciation to parents or whoever's in the audience, grandparents, is a way to create that lasting connection.
And I would also say that, I hope everyone becomes interested in commissioning, because commissioning isn't necessarily something that will break the bank. It's amazing how composers, when you approach them and say, I'd like you to do this, and this is how much money I have, will say, oh, I'd love to write a little piece for you, and the whole experience of your singers doing a piece for the first time, they gave the world premiere, and the audience who's there is hearing this piece for the first time, and the composer often is there, and so the singers have that whole relationship. The whole thing is just a win-win for everyone.
It is a win-win, and it's about relationships, right?
It's totally about relationships, totally.
Let's talk about COVID and other ways that it has impacted you personally, and also, our work at Vocal Essence and your work at Plymouth Church. How has it affected you?
There's no question that it's a challenge for all of us right now. And the one thing I said, as you know, and you have said to the singers, is, folks, we are not canceling a season, and find creative ways, because people want that. They're anxious for some kind of nourishment, whatever that could be, and we can provide that. So people know that with Vocal Essence, there's hope.
Tell everybody, what's the thing that you like the least about singing together live at this time? Like, which one of our protocols that we've implemented really bugs you the most?
Having to be spatially separated for the singers, because you just see them, they're anxious to hear what the others are doing, but they can't be next to them. I would say that, to me, is one of the real large frustrations for me, but I'm also aware that there will be a day that we won't have it. We will be back together, and I'm looking forward to that day very much.
I think we all are looking forward to that day, and I'm glad you shared that, because I wanted those in our listening audience to know that even when we're working with our professional singers, some of the same challenges that many of you are experiencing with your middle school and high school singers, it's the same challenges, and we all just have to do the best that we can and be as encouraging and super smart with our timing and our repertoire so that we can be successful. What's one high point in your career? And this has got to be challenging, but can you boil it down to like the top of the mountain experience at this point, knowing that there are many moments to come? Who's there with you? What was happening? Where was it? Set the stage for us.
there have been so many high points for me, many of them having to do with guest composers, guest performances who came to be part of what we did. But I guess going way back, I would say when I thought, could we start commissioning music? And that was something that wasn't being done much. And so I thought, I want to commission a composer, and we've never done that. I don't know how much it's going to cost. I don't know how to do it. I mean, I was, in my early 20s, and I thought, how do you make this work? And I wanted it to be Dominic Argento. And so he had been my teacher at the U. So I called him up and I said, Dr. Argento, I would like to commission you to write a piece of music. Went around and tried to find a piece. And eventually we landed on the text of Jonah and the whale. And when that premiere happened, and the chorus and the soloists and the orchestra, I mean, it was like, this is a vindication that I want to go this route. I want to commission people because of the joy and the excitement. And I have to just say, Philip, the same thing happened when I called up James Earl Jones and said, I want to commission a piece of music for you to narrate. And I'll never forget, he just said to me, for me? And I said, yes. He said, no one has ever done that. And I said, well, then I'm very glad to be the first. And it was a wonderful piece that Michael Abels wrote the music for. But those to me have been two of the great mountaintop experiences.
Well, thank you for this time, Phillip. I know everyone just appreciates getting to know more about your journey thus far, and we congratulate you on all that you have done to help put Minnesota choral music on the map around the world. And we look forward to all that's in store in the future.
Thank you, Phillip.
Axel Theimer, my mentor. You're retiring after 52 years as director of choral activities at St. John St. Ben's. You've served as founding artistic director of Contorai, founding artistic director of Amadeus Chamber Symphony, and you're on the faculty and executive director of Voice Care. Here's my question to you. How do you keep growing? How do you keep learning? Why do you want to keep doing more throughout all of these years?
The brain is a funny organ. And as we have learned over the years, our way of teaching and learning has gone through different levels of understanding. While when we were younger, we were told what to do, we were told what to learn, and we were told how to do things. And we have now come to a much clearer understanding that the way the brain learns is by doing. And as we acknowledge to ourselves that we don't know everything, which we sometimes tend to pretend, the brain actually is engaged in trying to find out more. And I think it's self-perpetuating that as long as we are curious and don't think we have learned it all, that there is an incentive that comes from within us that we want to continue to be active and learn more.
That sounds like the Axel I know, exactly. So, Axel, speaking of lessons learned, what are some important lessons that you've learned throughout your tenure at St. John St. Ben's and all of the other list of things that you've done?
I thought I knew much more than I did. And I was proud of that, and I defended that, and I came up with all kinds of assumptions. We come up with good reasons why something makes sense to us, and and then we get to the point where instead of continuing to be curious, we start to defend what our assumptions are, and we start to defend them as facts. And we totally forget that things are changing all the time, that our knowledge changes, that the information that we get changes all the time. And if we are stuck in just defending what we think is right, uh, that becomes very detrimental to our own growth, and then also to our chance to be a, a distributor of information, like being a teacher or being a friend or a colleague. And that was for me one of the most difficult things of lessons learned when in so many or so few ways it was pointed out to me. What you just said seems to make perfect sense, but I have to tell you that these days we have learned some new things about it, and it just doesn't function like that or works like this. And I had to go back and just really start to reevaluate all the things that I had arrived at as being my truth and my facts, which ne- obviously did not conform anymore with the world as it was developing around me.
So, Axel, you mentioned this a little bit that previously maybe your mindset wasn't in that same space that you had just talked about. And so, the question I have for you is, were there road bumps that maybe came from that throughout your career, or are there other road bumps that you maybe wouldn't have expected that then were clarified because of this new mindset that you're talking about?
The early years at St. Vincent, St. John's, when I came here, uh, they were two totally separate schools. I started the first SATB choir like 50 years ago, which now is the chamber choir, and there were so many things that had to be sorted out just to figure out how two departments can become one, how two colleges that are distant from each other can become one, how you can create one ensemble out of genders that live on different campuses and have to travel in order to get together. So it's I think some of those bumps were much more administratively than what I would say artistically.
Okay, I'm going to take a little left turn here, but it's our reality of the situation. And I think that this is maybe a bump in the road for all of us right now, which is the situation that we're living in, COVID time. So, we're kind of on a choir pause in a certain sense. Things just don't look exactly the same. So how has this specific time affected you at St. John St. Ben's, beyond, and how do you think we can grow from this? Or do you think we can grow from it? I think your answer is probably we can grow from this, but how do you think we can grow from this?
Well, I think everybody acts and reacts differently to it because all the situations are different. Every school deals with it differently. Every school district deals with it differently. We are so far fortunate that, at least at this point, while this is being put together, we are still in person. I'm still meeting with the choirs, although we have some rehearsal space limitations and time limitations. And as long as we stay within those protocols, I think we are safe. And so far it's been really really good as one can describe the overall situation. But again, just going back to what I said earlier, um, and again, I'm coming back to Babette Leitner because she has come up with this. It has become like a mantra. If we are just realistic, uh, we can face things in a total different way than if we just continue to go on wishing and shoulding and all those things. So when she says, and I use it really with my singers and some of my colleagues, uh, where she says, when she starts this mantra with, "Here I am as I am, in the world as it is," and then we say, "There's you have to accept that, and you learn to live with that, and if you can accept it, then it takes care of all unnecessary anxieties and tensions and frustrations, because you just say, this is where I am right now, these are the situations, and what can I do in that situation, and not say all the time, oh, I wish it would not be like this, it would not wear like this. Anytime you think that, you have wasted already time that you could have thought about something else that you actually could be doing under the circumstances. And I think so many of us spend too much time and energy on thinking about uh, all the things that we wish we would have done or could have done, instead of just saying, okay, here I am right now. Let's go with it. Let's go with the flow. C'est la vie. It is what it is.
That's such a good point, Axel. I've been thinking about that so much, honestly, and talking with, I mean, other faculty or choirs about if we're in a space of, I wish that we were in person. I wish that we were not wearing masks. I wish that we could stand closer than 6 feet. We're not really using the current opportunity to do anything for growth. We're kind of stuck. Even though I'm saying it out loud, it's hard for me to feel it. But I think when you can be in that space where you say, this is where we're at right now, this is the reality, and let's go. Can you talk a little bit about, 52 years, that's a long time. Can you go back and talk a little bit about your first thoughts and experiences in your first kind of few years at St. John St. Ben's? What was it like? What were you expecting? How did it turn out? What were high points? What were low points? And I think we all know that at that time, you had said you had learned this mindfulness kind of way of being that you're talking about now. Were things different then?
I hope I was different, and I hope that what has happened since then actually uh, has made a big difference in a positive way, not only to myself, but also to all the students that I have had over the years. And the fact is that we have really come a long ways, that we continue to allow ourselves to be affected and influenced by people who have something to share and who share it willingly and who engage you in a discussion and exploration, a conversation, and not in a here. In German, they have this saying, this is friss Vogel oder stirb, which just means, here bird, eat this or die. I mean, you just shove it down people's throats, all your knowledge, and you don't give them a chance to actually communicate and be a part of a conversation. That's why we have the dialogue, because we learn by dialoguing and not just by being told what's good and what's bad. This is not the way to go. But I was brought up in that way. I came from years singing in a boys' choir, where you were told this is the way you do it, and if you don't do it, we didn't get slapped, but it was a mental slap. It was just like, this is right and this is wrong. That's, I think, how I started to teach, because we all start to teach in the way we were taught. And this is where the conversations come in. That's where the learning starts to happen, that we have an opportunity to have the dialogue and hopefully have somebody who comes up to you and in a hopefully nice way challenges you, and just puts something else in front of you and says, well, this is my opinion, this is how I see. Let's talk about it, and not just say, you are so wrong, oh, you don't know anything, and therefore uh, really shut off any opportunity for both sides to learn and to grow and to understand more of what's going on. The students at the time, which was really the great thing, they wanted me to succeed. They were with me. There was incredible support. There was a thing. You are here now, and here we go.
I've said this to you before. I feel very lucky to have been taught by you, because I do think that my mindset going into even my first years of teaching was different than it would have been. You talked about dialoguing and the importance of dialoguing, and I know that you have for a long time thought that an important part about ACDA is our dialoguing and our opportunity to dialogue. And we've got great choral colleagues around the state that it's always fun to dialogue with and interesting. So how have, over the years, your choral colleagues, how have they helped keep things fresh for you? And it's probably not just your choral colleagues, because I know Babette and others from Voice Care Network have helped keep things fresh as well. But how have people helped keep things fresh for you?
Being given the opportunity to dialogue, I think, is the first thing, that is important. And I think that's where uh, it was so thrilling to see some years ago, when we actually started the dialogue, and it's still going on, and it still serves that purpose for us to get together, and really in not only in the social setting, but also in the actual session setting, whenever there were opportunities to combine ensembles, to work together with other ensembles. Those are the times when a very specific dialogue starts to happen, because you start to absorb the thoughts and the ideas of the other directors, find out how your colleagues think about a particular piece, how do you approach this, how do you approach that. So you suddenly start to absorb their lifelong own absorption, and you become instantly part of a larger body, which I think is so great. And when all of us get together, it's an incredible atmosphere. And I've always loved to watch you when you get in front of people, and you work with your choirs. There's a vitality and there's enjoyment in there. Make yourself available for any kind of exchange of ideas and comments, and I'm sure we always get them. And I think what has really happened in our choral community, that I think we are feeling much more comfortable to talk about this right now. Yeah, it was dialogue. I was sitting next to Ken Jennings in the choir room, and because we were talking about uh, the the different approaches of choral directors versus voice teachers, about how to deal with the voice. And there I was sitting next to Ken, and we just had the greatest time. And what was really not that great, I think, we were almost disruptive, because we were always talking to each other and making just snark comments that made each other, we just had to laugh, because we were so in agreement, because he was such a vocal person, but also a phenomenal, obviously, musician and choir director. So he combined so many things in ways that at that time were not necessarily the understood way of how to do a choir.
I think about something that I learned from you. We're the best at using our voice. We're the best singers singing like us. We're the best conductors conducting like us. And so really the process is finding more about us and not putting on other people. And I think you're right, that conversation allows for that. Whereas me taking notes um, about someone telling me something isn't opening up me. It's me trying to put on a mask or a costume of being somebody else. And I think it's really important. I think you're exactly right. Can you talk about one musical high point of your career, um, or maybe more than one musical high point of your career, and talk about why it was or has been so memorable?
If you're really honest, and again, if we really live by our mantra, then every musical situation that you get into is a high point, because it's where you are at that moment, and you have something to celebrate and something to be experiencing. I work with young voices. I mean, if you look at the college singer, some of them pretend as if they're 30 years old and want to sound like it, but they are still between 18 and 22. And that's basically yet a relatively young voice. No matter what you are able of doing, you can always make yourself sound older, but you pay a price. So I have not done things like, some of the really big choral works, which everybody wants to have done at some time. But over the years, we've had the opportunity, and I have to really thank Kathy Romey for that, with the Minnesota Chorale and with the Minnesota Orchestra, that I was able to bring my singers occasionally to join the chorale and join the orchestra to perform pieces which are totally out of my reach and out of the world. You know, there are things I will never, ever forget. Moments in Schoenberg's Gurre-Lieder, moments in the War Requiem, moments in a Mahler symphony where you just stand there and you almost don't want to sing because you are so moved and so in awe by what is going on. In any place wherever you allow music to happen, and not where you try to make music. If we try to make music, we don't do it justice. Music makes us. Music moves us. We don't move the music. If we try to move it, we kill it. And that's a stark statement, but if we try to control the music, we forget its purpose and what it can do for us and to us.
My first year just singing with you, and when my first concert was Schoenberg's Girl Leader. Like that's like, what is happening here? I remember my parents coming to that concert at Orchestra Hall and being like, that was really intense.
Well, you know, if you remember, you know, Gurlieder, they have 3 men's choruses in it, you know, and so there were not quite enough men. So what happened? We provided part of one of the men's choruses for this, which, you know, you never get that opportunity again in your lifetime, and it has to have had an effect on us.
Well, Axel, this is so fun. It's so good to see you and get to hear your voice, and I've been thinking about you a lot lately, obviously.
I just love to talk about what I love to do, and as long as my brain is still working and my body is still going, and as long as I am still curious, because I want also to find out what other people are doing, I've always said, use me. Just use me, for heaven's sakes, use me, you know.
Uh-oh, we better not publish this, because you are going to get a lot of emails after that.
Well, I don't publish my schedule officially, so I can always...
Yeah. Busy. No, just kidding.
Hi, everyone. Matthew Culloton here from the Singers, Minnesota Choral Artists, and I am thrilled to be with one of our choral luminaries here in the state and the world abroad, Dale Warland. Dale, thanks for taking some time with us today.
You're welcome. I'm happy to do it.
Dale, a lot of our listeners don't really know your backstory. We've got a lot of educators who have come up in the last 15 years or so who might not know how Dale Warland made his way to being a choral conductor. Will you just let us know how that happened?
Well, it's probably better that you don't know. It may sound like biography of Abraham Lincoln, but I was born on a farm in Iowa, a farmhouse in Iowa. We didn't have hospitals nearby, with no electricity, no running water. But I went to a one-room schoolhouse, which was about a mile from our farm. But we sang every day. All the international folk songs, patriotic songs, hymn tunes, we sang every day. So that was part of my growing up when I was very young. And I spent all 8 grades in a one-room schoolhouse. Sometimes most of the time I was the only one in my class. But the whole community at that point was very much involved with singing. Every civic event in our little village that took place in the town hall always began with community singing. And the Lutheran church in town not only was a religious center, but it also became a cultural center, primarily because the woman who was the music director, the conductor, organist, was a very gifted musician, perfect pitch. She could whistle to the point of bringing you to tears. She had that kind of emotional impact. And she also gave me my first piano lessons. She also gave me my first conducting opportunity. Out of the blue one day, she asked me to take over the children's choir. I had no idea what I was doing, but I did it. I don't know how. Then off to high school. Bands were big in Iowa at that point. Every village had a band. I played trombone, was very much involved with high school band, but across the hall was something quite fascinating, namely a choir was singing. And I was very taken by the conductor, very charismatic, and it wasn't long before singing was more important to me than playing my trombone. But also, during those years in high school, I had my second big opportunity for conducting. The drama teacher needed a small ensemble offstage, backstage, to represent a choir of angels. And I put together a little group of 6, 7 singers, and we did a little Palestrina motet, and I couldn't have been happier conducting in Carnegie Hall. That really, it's amazing looking back how significant somebody asking me to do this was so important in my growing up and the direction in which I followed. I've been inspired by the St. Old Choir. The first time I heard them, I'd driven 30 miles. That was the longest trip I'd taken from our farm to hear the St. Old Choir, and I'll never forget that night. But my goal was to go to St. Old College, and my goal was to be in that St. Old Choir. Well, disappointing as it was, I never made the St. Old Choir. Every year the auditions came around, I was so uptight. It meant so much to me. I would blow the audition, but it was a blessing in disguise because when my junior year, I was invited to be assistant conductor of the male chorus, which was a student-led group. And my senior year, I became music director. So I had a college choir, if you can believe it, when I was 19, 20 years old. And what a way to get started.
No doubt.
I went off to the Air Force. I organized the choir. As not my job, but I did it. And of course, the commander of the base was very happy. Came out of the Air Force and went to the University of Minnesota to major in composition. But while I was there, I was assistant conductor of the male chorus, as well as my last 2 years, assistant conductor through the university choir, and gained some great experience. Then went off to USC to work on my doctorate, and didn't do much conducting during that time, but I did a lot of great learning. And we had so many groups coming through Los Angeles, and so much was going on in that town. So it was a great experience all around.
It strikes me that along the way you've had such meaningful relationships with a large number of American composers of note, I think we could definitely say. Can you just tell us a little bit about a few of those relationships, and who were some of those composers who you worked with early on?
Well, I was rather not only naive but rather bold um, in my working with composers. While I was a student at St. Olaf, I had heard the St. Olaf Choir do this wonderful work by Jean Berger. So in my I thought, boy, I would like to have that conductor or that composer write a piece for my Viking Meal chorus. It was so I wrote off to Jean Berger. He was new to this country, and I never knew you paid a composer. That was I had no idea. I thought composers just did it. Well, lo and behold, I had a manuscript within a very short while, and I did a premiere of Jean Berger, the first commission he said he had in this country.
Wow.
But with no pay.
Yeah.
So that set me off. But I've always had an innate interest in the early 16th century primarily, and the very recent, at that time, was 20th century. So asking people that I saw the potential in was kind of been my way of life, whether it be a friend or a faculty member or a fellow student. But when we got to the age of the Dale Warland singers, we had some nice big names.
Yeah.
One example is William Schumann. I was very concerned that we had all this great new music he'd written, but not the jazz. The jazz style was not represented in serious choral music, and so I commissioned George Shearing. We commissioned Dave Brubeck, and I'm very happy that we kind of opened that door. But we had a program going with the Dale Warland Singers for several years, I think some 15 years, called Choral Ventures. And among others, we discovered a young pup, Eric Whitaker, and out of that relationship came Water Night, where Steve Paulus was my primary composer, not only in residence, but just over many, many years. I think we did commissioned some 30, 40, maybe even 50 titles. A lot of them were arrangements. I don't mean they're all great, extensive original works, but we every year we recorded, performed, premiered, and recorded Christmas music by Steve Paulus, Aaron Kernis, and then two other composers in residence, Carol Barnett and John Muleisen, Libby Larson, two University of Minnesota professors, of course, Dominic Argento and Paul Fettler, Janica Vandervelde, Jennifer Higdon, who is now a pretty famous name.
So earlier you spoke a little bit about seeing the St. Olaf Choir and your time there. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the impactful teachers, impactful other conductors in the field that inspired you along your way?
It goes back to Olaf Christensen at St. Olaf. He was so charismatic. I can remember I practiced just how to hold my hand when I conducted, so it was like his. Robert Fountain, I heard his choir from Oberlin early on. Those were early inspirations. But the big three in the professional world when I was growing up were Norman Luboff, Roger Wagner, and Robert Shaw. And all of them became friends later on, but perhaps Robert Shaw was more of a lifelong friend as well as a great inspiration. I first admired him from afar. I became his assistant, actually probably glorified errand boy when he was at Meadowbrook. But we actually felt like colleagues at the end, and he asked for the Dale Warland Singers when he came to town to work with Minnesota Orchestra. A great inspiration. The problem is with, I think this is a word to all conductors, would-be conductors, growing up conductors, is when you have somebody so charismatic as somebody like Robert Shaw, it's easy to go out and not only emulate the good things, but emulate the things probably you should not, that are not you. The sooner you can separate what is truth for you, the better, and become your own person. But I certainly owe a lot to Robert Shaw. Shaw would call out of the blue and never identify himself. He would just blurt out something kind of either profane or nasty or so you always had to be ready for a quick rebuttal. We would exchange. I mean, he would call me quite often just about repertoire because he knew my interest in new music. And I can remember him saying, "Do you think I can do the Argento, just the second and the third movements or whatever of I Hate and I Love?" And I checked with Dominic, no, don't do that. So there are all kinds of questions that I was so flattered that he would take time to call and ask my opinion.
You talked a little bit about the conductors here in the States, but you've also made wonderful, impactful relationships with conductors around the world. Who are some of those international conductors who you hold in warm regard?
Well, I fortunately received a Ford Foundation grant that paid for my replacement when I was teaching at McAllister, that allowed me to go and spend time with two of the greats in my life, David Wilcox at King's College in Cambridge, and Eric Eriksson, conductor of the Swedish Radio Choir in Stockholm. And they were so different in some ways, but my gosh, they were terribly, terribly important. I would probably say I'm closer to, in general, of all the conductors we've talked about so far, to Eric Eriksson. There was something that I identified with. Maybe it's a Scandinavian background, I don't know.
Switching gears a little bit, I want to be mindful of the audience of educators that we've got. And a lot of people, I don't think, have connected that you were a college professor while also leading the Dale Warland Singers for a stretch until you went full-time with DWS. What ways did you find to keep kind of learning and keep growing musically while you were at the helm of the DWS?
Realized how important repertoire and programming is. My little dictum is what the choir becomes or does not become is through the repertoire. Mm. What you, the music director, become or do not become is through that repertoire. So I think early on, plus just a personal interest, did a lot of digging. And to me, it's digging of repertoire. And then it's sketching for when it comes to programming. What we forget so often is the importance of score study. Once you've got good music, you've got to learn what goes into making that good music come off the page.
Along the way, then, you must have had some accidental lessons sort of creep into your life. Have you stumbled across some things that have stuck with you that at the moment were just a hapless accident?
Well, it's funny you use the word accidental because we don't learn everything in the classroom. We don't learn everything in books. I've had some surprises, and you remind me of the first time I heard a real pianissimo. Now that sounds kind of naive, but the Dale Warland Singers were in Frankfurt, Germany. We were part of a performance of the Mahler Second with the Frankfurt Radio Orchestra, I believe it was, and Israeli conductor Einball. And he created a pianissimo I'd never heard before. I mean, such a beautiful, just absolutely stunning sound, all because he reached a true pianissimo. That's one thing that kind of happened by accident, and it's never left my memory. And the second thing you remind me of, Matt, is Louis Armstrong, the famous jazz trumpeter, came to the University of Minnesota when I was a student at St. Elfenum, and I heard for the first time a steady beat. Now, again, that sounds naive, but once I heard what indeed was steady, I'll never forget it. Those are two things that come to mind there, what you would call accidental.
Yeah, that's great. Well, reflecting back a little bit on the Dale Warland singers, what are a few of the performance highlights that you still just hold on to, that you remember like they were yesterday? Are there a few of those?
Well, first it comes to mind is Penderecki's St. Luke Passion. The Minnesota Orchestra and Skroczewski were given the American rights for the United States premiere of the St. Luke Passion, which in its day was the most cutting edge, the most challenging work any of us had seen or heard of. 3 adult choirs, a children's choir, and soloist. Shaw, I wanted to show him the score when I was his assistant at Meadowbrook, and he really wasn't interested. And then the next time I saw Robert Shaw was at Carnegie Hall when we were doing the New York premiere, and he had heard about it and came up and talked to the choir and said, "This, people, is like what it would have been like to have been at the premiere of the Bach St. Matthew Passion." He was that taken by it. James McMillan is the second. The work is the 7 last words that I have stuck with me. A fresh, wonderful setting. We performed, when I say we, the Dale Warland singers, performed the Cinq Rochons with Messiaen in the audience, if you could imagine. It was far the most difficult piece I'd ever done at that point. And then, of course, the commissioning and the preparation and even recording of works by Dominic Argento. My relationship with Dominic Argento is a special event in my life all its own. But I Hate and I Love and Walden Pond.
What kind of conducting have you been doing away from home?
I didn't do a concert, but I had the good fortune of preparing Chanticleer for one of its annual Christmas programs that they tour with. I've been in residence and done concerts at Yale University, Cincinnati University, University of Oklahoma, University of Utah, USC, and I've taken on the Mormon Tabernacle Choir a couple of times.
So then in this last stretch, in this last year, really, what activities have you been doing closer to home that are keeping you fruitful and busy?
Who needs a book? But I'm writing a book on choral music, and currently I'm doing quite a bit of Zooming. I just completed a session for Yale University on the 4 Christmas motets of Poulenc, and I have a master class for conductors coming up at Notre Dame. And then one of the really exciting things, as we all know as conductors, commercial recordings and recording sessions is one thing, but so often we lose the spontaneity of live performances. And Gotham Records has started a series of Dale Warland singers live performances, and we've completed 2 and about to start the 3rd.
Dale, on behalf of ACDA of Minnesota and myself, of course, as one of your biggest fans, I really want to say thanks for taking time to talk with us today. And as all of our listeners are well aware, there's a reason you are on the list of Minnesota's ACDA Luminaries. Well deserved. So thank you very much for taking time with us today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed every minute.